Sweet. We've got Xavier. I don't know if it's Xavier or Javier. I hope you'll correct me. Calling him from Michigan. Says that anyone trying to prove God is silly. And Xavier is a creationist himself. Xavier or Javier, please tell me which one it is. You're on the line. How are you doing?
Hi. It's actually Xavier, although my grandmother is Mexican, okay. So.
Yeah, that's why I'm careful.
After Charles Xavier.
Yeah, I live here in Oklahoma, and we get, everybody, because you have Spanish spelling. So I just want to make sure I'm getting it right. Okay, so Xavier, it says here you're a theist and you think that it's silly to try to prove God. Would you please walk us through, first of all, what you believe in and why? Because we want to know what God we're talking about, and then why you believe that thing would be really helpful if you could give it in a summary. We might dig into it more later. And then what are you talking about here about why it's impossible to prove or silly to prove God?
Well, you said I was a creationist. I'm actually not. It might seem contradictory, but my whole point is I believe in... I was raised first Catholic. It turned into a cult. It's a really long story that we don't need to get into. But
yeah. Forgive me if I called you a creationist. I must have... Yeah, forgive me if I called you a creationist. I must have been misspoke and just mixed up the terms. I meant to say theist. That's what I've got written here. That's what I was going for. Thank you for calling me out on that.
I mean, usually there's not a difference in those two things, but
right.
So my whole idea is that I think it was actually something that you said. I'm actually a longtime fan of you, Forrest, and I'm kind of freaking out talking to you. Faith and science is completely incompatible. Trying to prove God is silly because the whole point is faith, and you're supposed to, take that leap. You're not supposed to, there's A, B, and C, and this is why. Like, there's even a passage where Thomas says, when I see the wounds in his hands or whatever, and it's like, and they say, well, no, you should believe without seeing, and we actually don't like that here, which is pretty problematic. I don't necessarily think that's a good basis to form strong opinions on important topics, especially when it comes to the laws and legislation. I think that can be dangerous. So, what am I saying? But yeah, I am a theist just because I grew up in a cult, and now my life is so much less religious than it had started out that a lot of Christians today, I feel like, would say that I'm not even technically religious.
So, just so I'm understanding, like you've given us some background into what you believe and why, and I really appreciate that. What it sounds like you're saying is that you acknowledge the fact that you said specifically that science and faith are incompatible, and that your belief in a deity is not rooted in any scientific understanding, not rooted in evidence, not something that you try to look for reasons for. You just believe it because that's what you're supposed to do. Am I understanding that properly without straw manning it?
Almost, yes, except for me specifically, that I believe it because I'm supposed to. I believe it because I choose to. I've married into a family that's very, I don't want to say very religious in practice, but they're just very, very faithful, believe in God, very Christian people. But they all believe in God because of an experience they've had. They say they've experienced God. I have not up to this point in my life. And I still wonder if I ever am going to. And I've come to the conclusion that I may never, but I choose to because my family does. And I don't lose anything from it, almost like a Pascal's wager, but I certainly don't think anyone else should change their life for something, certainly for something they've never experienced or have reason to believe.
So I saw Gordon looking there with a smile on his face, like he wanted to say something. What do you think?
Yeah, I have a question for you. And this is very dependent on your local laws and regulations, and don't go do something illegal. But have you ever tried magic mushrooms? Because if you would like to have a spiritual experience and maybe commune with a higher power, whether or not that is real, because whatever happens logically is going to be taking place entirely in your head, but you can have a very profound and spiritual experience that might allow you to access those parts of your brain that would help you relate more to your family and the belief system that they've decided to accept because of their experiences.
I've thought of doing that. As a rule, I don't typically partake. I don't particularly take any mind-altering substances, especially with the way I suffered a lot from. Okay, so I guess yes, I drink way too much coffee than I need to. That is mind-altering.
I'm just pointing out to you that you do use mind-altering substances all the time. And it's just the value judgments we've placed on certain types of substances. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that is true. I would be worried myself just that if I were to take something that I don't know if I could ever walk my fragile mind back from that mind-shattering
There's
I've been there.
Yeah, there's a difference between having like a cup of coffee versus shooting an entire bag's worth of caffeine into your system at one time. So keep that in mind as well. Many of the ways that things are depicted in media make you think that the moment you like have something on your tongue, suddenly the world turns into rainbows and everything explodes. It may not be like that. With regards to the idea of like God being real or not, from a scientific perspective, I'd be completely willing to accept the existence of God if someone presented really good proof for it, right? From a scientific perspective, when we talk about hypotheses, you can never prove a hypothesis, you can simply prove them wrong. And so it's sort of the absence of other stuff that leads you to propose a model to fit the system. As it stands, we have, for me, a lot of proof that God does not exist, or at least that he did not consciously and intentionally create the world, because we have millions of years worth of, billions of years worth of geological data, the universe expanding, the Big Bang, DNA, evolution, phylogenetic. We have all of these things that sort of say, well, it doesn't really look like there was some guy who made the Earth in 7 days. If someone were to present really compelling evidence that that was the case, I'd be willing to reform my hypothesis. But until that happens, as my PI in grad school would always say, show me the data. Like Tom Cruise and in that movie with Cuba Gooding Jr., show me the money, but show me the data.
That's kind of where I'm at with it. It's like it's as Gordon said, you can have a psychedelic experience and feel some crazy shit. I've done some drugs in my time, and I did them at a time when I was somewhat spiritual and quasi, I wouldn't call it religious, but like I believed in some shit, and I was, oh my glob, I was connected to the whole earth, and I felt the vibrations of the planet beneath me, and I was one with the universe, and it was amazing. And I did them when I was very, very atheist and had already deconstructed from all those things, and I felt a lot of the same ways. It was awesome. I just didn't apply this meaning to it that was unjustifiable. I wasn't looking for a reason to believe anything in particular. I was just enjoying where I was. So I'm certainly not going to encourage anybody to try any drugs unless they really want to and they're an adult and blah blah blah. Don't get confused. I'm just saying, like, there's lots of ways for you to feel lots of things. Anybody who thinks that going to church is like a spiritual experience that unites them with God has never been to a good rock concert and felt the exact same thing, because that's what that shit's for. Like, there's lots of ways you can experience these things. None of it actually points to a God. So when you're talking about, oh, your family's had all these experiences, I don't find those experiences valuable. But we're not really talking about them. I guess we are talking about you. And I'll let you respond to everything we've said first, and then I have a different set of questions for you.
To immediately respond to what you said, but I have something else about the magic mushroom thing.
Sure.
My father-in-law just the other day said, well, that one time when we were praying together, I could tell you were feeling something, and like something was moving in you. And I said, well, that's not necessarily God, because I also got very emotional watching Sean Astin carry Elijah Wood up Mount Doom, and with Howard Shore's music in the background. That was
Frodo lives.
So,
Frodo is risen.
Um, and so, like, to that point, taking magic mushrooms to feel something spiritual, it would also be synthetic. It's not necessarily spiritual. I just feel like it is. And if I were to have an experience with God, should he be there, I'd want it to be entirely organic, as it were. Well, not that magic mushrooms are organic, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, and like that's kind of where I'm coming back to now. Is that like you said at the beginning of this thing that you understand that faith and science are incompatible structures, and you're talking about your belief in God, and the way you've described it seems like you are very rational about everybody else's beliefs, and you're willing to dismiss everybody else's claims for what they are, as you know, pseudoscientific based, something that's backed by their emotion, something that's supported by their feelings or their misinterpretation of an event or a phenomenon that they're assigning meaning to that doesn't belong there. Like, it sounds like you're doing this really well with everything else, and I'm wondering why you're not taking that extra step with yourself to say, like you said yourself, faith is not a scientific endeavor. It's not something that's compatible with scientific, thinking. Why carry the baggage then? Like, why would you make such an expensive demand of yourself to say, all the rest of the universe I'm going to treat this way, but this one question I'm going to allow myself to have a completely different kind of thinking for? And even when other people try to use that same kind of thinking, I'm not going to allow it. But for me, I'm going to let myself do this thing that I admit and accept doesn't make any sense. Like, what's the point of that? I don't understand.
Well, I hold that I hold the right to decide I don't want to hold to it later. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
Right now, I don't feel. You often quote when I think it was an apocalyptic thing, when the guy gathered all of the science and of the world, and was it Napoleon who said, "Wait, why didn't you say anything about God?" And I had no need for that.
Lamarck. No, Pascal. I think it was Pascal. Yeah.
And kind of in a similar way.
Laplace. I knew that was wrong. Pascal. Fuck me. Laplace. I'm sitting here thinking like that's not the name, and I look like an idiot right now. Laplace. It was Laplace. Oh, God damn. Sorry. Continue. I apologize. I just couldn't let that go. I was like, that's wrong. That's so wrong. Yeah, Laplace.
You could have said Marco Polo, and I would have been like, yeah, that was it.
Someone's getting in the comments real mad. Somebody's deleting a paragraph of how much I'm stupid right now.
But it kind of in a similar spirit. Believing in God does not affect my day-to-day life in a negative way, the way it had. I was raised Catholic and then indoctrinated into a cult, started by my dad. And
right.
I even went to the seminary. In the seminary, the illusion was sort of shattered. And I realized, I was told my whole life that I am broken and a miserable creature who can only be fixed by God. If I go here, that's the closest I can get to God, and he can fix me. And then I get there and realize all of these people are assholes. They're all awful people who hate each other and hate everyone else. And I'm like, where do I go? So I deconstructed from Catholicism, and I was kind of, I don't know, I guess agnostic for a while. And for a bit, I would say out loud to myself, like, I think for 2 days, whenever like a concerning religious question came up in my head, I'd say, I'm an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and that would be like, I don't believe in this. I need to worry about it. But I just, after a while of trying to be an atheist, I just couldn't stop falling back into this idea that there is a God. But I also have to acknowledge that if I take that leap of faith for a God, that doesn't mean I should throw away what I can see with my eyes. So, evolution.
The big hang up.
Yeah, I believe in that.
The big hang up that I have here, and I at risk of repeating myself, so forgive me if this sounds redundant, but like the big hang up that I'm having here is, once again, you've described a deconstruction story, and you've talked about how you make special exception for faith in this one instance, and you said it doesn't affect your day-to-day life. Well, then neither would not believing in the thing. So it seems like you've made it this thing that's so small to seem benign, and therefore it kind of leaves this security blanket for you. Like, well, I still kind of believe in this, and it's okay. And I guess
I'm going to play devil's advocate too. Why only one God?
Yeah, well, that was exactly what I was going to ask. Is it like, you're playing this faith game with this thing? The common question we ask on the show is, couldn't you use the same kind of thinking here for any other god or any number of gods? What if I were to say the exact same story, front and back, every single thing that you just said, but I replaced it with, and I just, I believe in this pantheon of all these different gods, and they're totally different than the one you believe in, and my pantheon specifically says that your god doesn't exist. I just believe something completely incompatible with your belief for the exact same reasons. Like, why wouldn't that track with you, or would it track with you, and then how?
I think it is completely legitimate to worship any god or gods, plural, because again, it's, for me at this point in my life, it's more of a culture and just a hope, I suppose. Like I said, Pascal's wager. I mean, I feel like Pascal's wager makes sense to an individual making a decision for themselves. It does not make sense as a broad argument like, oh, well, you should. And also, because it's not just a yes or no, because the yes also contains follow all of these rules, follow all of those rules, don't eat this, do that, and also rate define.
Pascal's wager doesn't just apply to a god existing. Pascal's wager also brings with it the extra baggage of a hell existing, or some sort of afterlife. So you're not just believing in this god. If you're using Pascal's wager, which we could do a whole thing about why Pascal's wager is a terrible argument, but like, if you're using Pascal's wager for this, you're not just saying, well, I believe it, and if I believe it and I'm right, then great, and if I believe it and I'm wrong, the issue is that comes with the baggage of, if I don't believe this and I'm wrong and God's real, then I'm going to be punished for it. And that brings with it a slew of other issues that you're now assigning yourself to. So I have to ask, do you believe in an afterlife? Do you believe in a heaven and hell? Do you believe in punishment? Do you believe that there are rules to the universe that you have to follow, and all these other things that you're sitting here saying you don't believe in? And if not, why the hell would just believing just in case even matter?
This is going to get a lot of pissed off at me, but
that's what we do it every day.
It's kind of his bread and butter.
Well, I'm my whole family see it. Actually, my dad doesn't even talk to me anymore. But I don't want to talk to him, so it's fine.
Sorry to hear
we agree on that. Nah, he's an asshole. But I don't believe in hell at all, really.
Most cultures on Earth don't, honestly. There's very few that do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the kind of hell that's espoused by mainstream Christianity, and especially the Catholic Church, is ripped off from Dante's Inferno. Isn't
a lot of times it is.
And for two reasons, I don't think a literal hell is real. One,
it also didn't
if you look at what the Bible says, that's not technically what it.
It didn't exist within the history of Christianity until someone made it up. It's not part of the faith of Judaism. So hell as a concept did not appear until they started trying to control people, being like, bad, pay money to the church so you don't go to the bad place, tithing.
Right.
If you look at the history of Christianity, like very, very quickly in a religion, history of religion class, you'll see like how many things were constructed around modern Christianity and how much of that was a mechanism to control people, especially within the patriarchy.
Yeah,
whatever reasons you don't believe in hell, I guess it's just the question that I'm trying to drive at here is like, why is Pascal's wager compelling to you if there's nothing on the line and you're just believing it because you'd like to?
Well, the other thing, I don't know if this is exactly answering your question. Please don't get mad at me. I'm trying to keep track of my thoughts, track of my train of thought.
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion. All right, so if I accept evolution as in the scientific method, what the scientific method in history tells us about the Bible and how it's been altered and changed throughout history is also true. I don't actually believe most of the Bible, or if parts of the Bible are true, they've been heavily interpreted to mean completely different things and used to control people. Religions are started by people who have agendas, and they interpret it and tell people what to do so they can control them. And I feel like there's a difference between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. And if I feel like almost every Christian, maybe except the Westboro Baptist Church, would say that God or Jesus or both, whatever, is the most loving being in the world or in the universe, in conception. Jesus, or forget Jesus, God cannot be then more loving, more merciful, more empathetic than me.
But
So,
question for you: is that a
seem-
safety blanket? Does that make you feel good to think about that?
About what?
It was a loving God, there being some higher power that cares about you specifically.
It actually doesn't make me feel better because I feel like if he did care about me, he would have said something, you know?
Would be pretty cool, right?
Like,
I feel like
I'm like, yeah.
Okay, so we've been on this call for about 20 minutes. So I've got to move on. I'm sorry, but like I want to ask you one more thing because like I feel like I've been trying to dance around a point to try to get there, and I feel like you've given me reasonable answers, but I think you're missing the one thing that I'm driving at here. And the one thing I'm driving at is: do you care about whether or not the things that you believe are true?
I would say I care, but I'm also completely fine with being wrong.
Well, okay, well then that's it then. There's no reason if that's where you're coming from, then there's no reason for you to really strongly care about anything that you believe, and that there's no reason for you to try to convince anybody of anything. And I could tell you today that actually there's the gnomes that drive the moon are the ones that are also controlling politics here on the planet, and you can, oh well, I guess I'll believe it because I don't really give a shit if I'm wrong, like what? Is there any length that you wouldn't be able to go to with that mentality? Is there anything you couldn't believe based on the faith that you're espousing and the kind of thinking that you're advocating for here? I don't see how you can be comfortable with that kind of worldview.
Well, like I said, but I think the note I put on the call is trying to prove something like that is silly because I mean it is God. Technically, the idea of God is silly, but I'm in a place in my life where God is a big part of my family, the family I've married into, and the life I've built, and
so then that's it. Then it's a utility, because my final question was going to be: what is the use of a belief that could be absolutely anything, and you don't care if it's real or not, and you acknowledge the fact that you have no good reason to believe it, and that it can't be proved, and that it shouldn't be proved, and you just believe it because you want to believe it because you want to believe it? What's the point? What's the utility of that? And you said it. It makes it more comfortable for your family life. It doesn't make any damn sense. You don't care if it makes any damn sense. You just believe it because you want to believe it. And if that works for you, I'm not going to tell you.
Though.
Right, I understand that, and that's what actually makes it even more perplexing to me, because like I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, dude. If you seem like a reasonable guy in all sorts of other ways, your family life is your family life. You do you, as long as you already mentioned that you're not trying to get religion into legislation and you think that's wrong. So you've sitting well with me in that regard. But like, I don't know, man. That does not sit well in my mind that you can just choose to believe something that you acknowledge you have no good reason to believe, and you could replace it with literally any other batshit crazy belief and have the exact same backing and the exact same consequence for it, and it wouldn't mean a damn thing. And you're just like, fuck it. Yeah,
Have
what
you heard of the flying spaghetti monster? Because I'd highly recommend him as a choice of deity. Excellent. And you can
exactly
the spaghetti monster.
Cool. Flying spaghetti monster. Google it.
I love anti-religions. They're hilarious. Particularly fond of the church of 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, and I do all the time on the show. I talk about Roland the Closet Goblin and how we have, this goblin that lives in my closet and eats Subway sandwiches and grants wishes. And I talk about that with theists all the time. They're like, you can't believe in something like that. And I'm like, I give all the exact same reasons you do. And we have a big argument about it. But here with what you're saying, you would believe in Roland the Closet Goblin because fuck it, why not? And like, I don't get that. That's a wild thing to say on the air. You know what I mean?
I suppose it would be more of a case of do as the Romans do. If everyone in your family believed in Roland the Closet Goblin, and
everybody in my family was religious, bruh. My wife, when I met her, was a Christian, and I don't know, man. And like I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life. That's it. It's fine. But like, I hope if because of the show that we're on and because of what I do for a living and because of the platform that I have and the reasons why I have it, I sincerely hope that this is something that you and your family, but at least you, again, face a little bit more realistically. I wouldn't say honestly. You're being very honest about the fact that you have no good reason to believe this shit. I just hope that maybe you take it a little bit more seriously and realize that it's not, whether or not you believe in a thing and whether or not you allow yourself to wrap your head around something does have ripples. It does have ramifications, whether you recognize them or not. And that I don't think is worth the baggage that it brings with it. But that's just me. Xavier, I'll give you the last word and then we got to move on, man.
All right. Well, as a closing statement, I suppose I would just say, I believe the Beatles are one of the most amazing bands in the world. They actually released their last song, which is incredible. But a lot of people I meet say they're not that great and they're overrated. And that's just an opinion I have. I'm not saying like it's allegory is limp. It's obviously the Beatles were people. We can go back and we can quantify certain things about their existence. But my point is believing that the Beatles is the greatest band. And I can have a lot of great reasons for that. But it's honestly, when it comes down to it, just something that I believe in because it makes me feel good.
There's a big difference between an opinion and a truth claim, and I think you're conflating those on purpose to not deal with that. But that's what I'm reading into it, man. Anyway, we're gonna move on to the next call. But thank you so much for being here, Xavier. Please call back if you want to talk more about your beliefs.
Hey, it's Jimmy Snow here. I'm the executive producer on the line with a fun fact. Did you know 100% of the hosts of this channel enjoy eating? It's true. And if you would like to help contribute to their ongoing addiction, you can do so by going over to Patreon or becoming a channel member. There are show-specific, host-specific tiers. Those are awesome. But also, you can leave a super thanks with a special little highlighted comment. You can like, comment, and subscribe. All of those will help fill our whittle bellies. By the way, check out some of this content over here. Algorithm, what next?